What's happening? Welcome to the 42nd episode of the Slapstream with Djordje, live from Slapsville. And first of all, I want to thank to all the new people that joined my Patreon. So if you'd like to support the channel, first of all, you should definitely slap that subscribe button and share these videos. You don't get a chance to see all these amazing bass players talking about slap and bass and all their careers anywhere else. So make sure to share their knowledge, because all of us bass players, we crave the knowledge from all these guys. And I think this is a perfect opportunity that we can actually learn from some real legends and some current bass players that have lots of experience and expertise on all and anything bass related. So it's a very unique opportunity. So please share the videos after you slap the subscribe button. And special thanks goes to all the people that joined my Patreon. If you'd like to support the channel, please go in the description of the video and check out my Patreon, Venmo, PayPal, and help me keep it going, because I don't want to stop promoting slap bass, and I don't want to stop promoting all these amazing guests that deserve way more recognition than they actually have. Some of them have more, some of them have less. My today's guest definitely has unbelievable biography and unbelievable credits under his belt. I have lots of rockabilly and psychobilly bass players on following me. Um, I guess it's because lots of things that I did it's in that field, rock and roll field. And if you're not familiar with my guest, you can of course Google him and be impressed. But I'll tell you, he played with so many amazing people. Some of them are T-Bone Burnett, Johnny Cash, Elvis Costello, Harry Connick Jr., Elton John, Diana Krall, Alison Krauss, Imelda May, Willie Nelson, Robert Plant, Steven Tyler, Ralph Stanley, Greg Allman, Lorella Lynn, Vince Gill. I mean, the list is, I think, never ending. And it's the best thing is that he's still active as much as always. So I'm sure that in next few years, as long as the pandemic stops, gonna double all these amazing names. And there's a reason. He's just unbelievable performer, unbelievable studio musician. And without further ado, I would like to introduce my today's guest, Dennis Crouch. Welcome, Dennis.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah, and hello to all the fellow bassists out there and
Yes, I'm really
musicians.
happy that you were able to join me here in
Ah,
Slapsville, with your
yeah,
crazy busy schedule, even now during the pandemic.
yeah, yes, yes, and that's
How have
good.
you been doing during this whole end of the world thing going on?
I'm doing as well as everyone is. I'm doing great. I'm doing great actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the positive approach. Have you been doing any live streams, any sessions, or have you been keeping yourself busy as a musician?
Yeah, yeah, it's been good. Um, Live streams, of course. That seems we're all in that place right now, and so yeah, I do one on Tuesday nights with a great acoustic guitarist named David Greer and
Hmm.
Stuart Duncan and Corey Walker and Casey Campbell, and but I done last week I done my first the first show that. I've done stuff like at the Ryman where there's no audience really, and
Hmm.
but it was the first concert that I've done since the pandemic, and
Wow, wow.
where they allowed half capacity in, and actually got to get dressed and get those side stage jitters where it's like, man, I hope I remember the ending to the third song and the beginning of the fifth song, and
Wow. Okay.
and it was a lot of fun, you know, and it was a heavy. Um, it was a lady named Winona Judd, and
Hmm.
so it was heavy already, you know. 'Cause she's such a brilliant singer and a great singer, and just a quartet, you know.
Nice.
Um, Pianist, her husband Cactus Mosier playing drums and upright bass, and her voice is, you know, I think she just brought us along just out of gratitude and just to be nice, but she's so great that she doesn't need a band, you know.
That's
And
amazing. And where can people see you? Like, where can you mentioned that you're doing a live stream every Tuesday? Is it how they can
uh
come in to see you?
yeah, there's a, a a really good buddy of all of ours named Richard Smith, and the engineer Brad Binge, and they started this thing called Nashville Tune Stream.
Mhm.
And that's where people could go, like on the Facebook, and just type in Nashville Tune Stream, and we're there on Tuesdays. But I think just about every night of the week, you know, they have like different singer songwriters or full bands, and you know, great Dixieland players come in there and play. You
Oh,
know,
cool.
really great bass players that come in and you know, sort of do the Dixieland thing.
Like old school jazz, New Orleans style.
Yeah, yeah, not yeah, it's pretty traditional. You know,
Okay.
I know the drummer, and he's pretty good about it. And you know, I don't know if it goes as far back in the bass players world as like a Pops Foster or something, you know, but definitely you go in and you get the idea of what it is.
Nice.
People
All
can
right.
just a Nashville tune stream, and
Okay. So
yeah,
uh,
and
the
of
link
course
is
the
in the
station.
description. So what have
Yes,
you said?
excuse me.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, no worries. So the link is in the description. So whoever wants to see Dennis every Tuesday, click on the link and check out the stream. All right. So I want to be focused on your career now. I'm very interested to hear how have you started? Like, what was your first instrument? How did you decide to pick a bass?
Uh, the bass picked me. You know, that's how I view it. Is I didn't pick the bass. The bass picked me, and I was 7.5, maybe 8 years old. I think I was around seven actually, between second and third grade, when I actually picked the bass up and you know, started thumping around on it. But as far back as I can remember, you know, I would stand my dad's guitar up like a bass and play it like a bass, and I always heard those parts in my head, you know. That when I would listen to a song, I didn't hear any of the treble instruments first. I always heard the bass, and so I didn't choose the bass. I feel like the bass chose me, you know.
Was bass your first instrument?
Yes.
Oh,
Most
nice.
definitely. Yeah, I've
And
always, and I was so small that I couldn't tune the D and the A strings, so my dad would have to tune. I could tune G and E because I could actually reach those tuning pegs, but I couldn't reach, you know, D and A. So,
so how old were you again when you started playing bass?
7.
Wow,
So
that's
I
really
was
early.
between second and third grade. You know.
Wow, and it was what kind of size was this? A smaller size bass?
No, it was it would be a three-quarter, three-quarter
Wow, okay.
size bass. Yeah.
And uh, whose bass was it?
It was a family friend
Okay.
that had just left the bass at our house, and it was
Oh,
propped in the corner, and but I was still, in my mind and in my head, I always heard those bass parts. You know, that's what I always heard first. So um, I wasn't interested in learning anything else. I was interested in learning the bass, the upright bass.
lots of people say like, "Oh, bass shows me," but this is really a story when bass shows you. I mean, just to have, family's instrument there, and then you started doing it when you were 7. It's amazing. Um,
Yeah, and I was still trying to play even if I could if I could have held my dad's guitar right, you know, I would have still been trying to play the bass parts just on the top 4 strings, but I would still hold it like a bass, and it was like I wasn't interested in learning how to strum. Later on, I learned how to play some guitar just so I would have a knowledge of chord structures and how chords work, diminished chords or augmented chords, and just to have a knowledge of what that chord meant and what it says, but I still wasn't interested in being like, oh well, I'll sub playing guitar tonight, or banjo or horn or fiddle. uh, don't call me for that. i'm a
so
I'm a bass player.
you definitely are. So, what are the other instruments that you play besides bass?
Guitar,
Guitar. Okay.
but I'm not a fluent. It's just to have a working knowledge of
Yes, that's
you
how
know
I see guitar as well. That's how I see guitar and piano. I can get by, so I can write on these instruments, but I would never play in public.
I'm with you 112% on that.
Yep.
But it's
Um,
good, as bass players out there. We all have an opinion, and we have our ways, but in my opinion, if you don't know another instrument such as piano or guitar, learn a little bit of it just so you have a knowledge of those chords. Because in the upright world, we have 4, maybe 5 strings, depending on your bass. And if you have an extension, you can get lower chords, but still, that's it. That's what we have. And so to have a chord knowledge is, I feel like it's important. You know.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a reason why every uh, bass player in jazz school or classical school, when you go, you have to learn piano. Like, I mean, basic stuff, just to understand the whole function of the bass. Like, I mean, I think like learning these instruments really help you being a better bass player, because if am I going to play a root here, or am I going to play a third here, like to emphasis, I don't know, a seventh chord or something.
Right.
And you get a better better knowledge why those things function in a certain way when you actually can see that on a piano. I always thought like, oh, piano is perfect. I wish I started on piano like for a few years and then switched to bass, but I did that later on, just like to be a better bass player.
Yes.
um
Yes.
do you have any formal education,
No.
music? No.
Mm-mm.
Okay, so you're self-taught?
Yes.
No
Yeah.
lessons at all?
Mm-mm. No.
Wow.
No. I was
That
fortunate, to yeah. I'm the third of 3 boys. I'm the youngest one, and
okay.
my oldest brother's a really, really phenomenal musician, and our middle brother is a great musician. He just never pursued it, and
Hmm.
so I was fortunate to grow up, and our dad played, and yeah, I was just fortunate to be around, to come up with that, and I came up just thinking everyone knew how to play music, you know, and I learned later on that wasn't the case, but in our family, it was just it was something that we done, and it just it wasn't thought about. We just played. We just played, and you know, I found out later that's not the case. but but
This
yeah, I
is
was
one of those
fortunate.
things you breathe, you talk, you play music. It's like it should be like that. The world would be better place if
I
everybody played music.
agree. I agree. It could be calmer. It could be calmer. You know,
Oh yeah,
because
I
it is
think that
it's a universal language. That's one thing. No matter what dialect or what language you do speak, one thing that comes through is music. You
yes.
know.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think that this whole global situation, pandemic, like really showed us how much we actually need music, how much we need art, and that's I would
Hmm.
say that musicians and music are kind of like really essential, for the world to function normally, and then to breathe, uh, you know, healthy air, and then that music helps with all of that.
Oh yes, a hundred
Uh,
percent.
do you
Um,
remember how did you get interested in slap bass?
you know, now you ask about formal educations. I didn't have like a formal education, but there was musicians around us, and I grew up. It was a very remote area in Arkansas, but one of the towns near near us was a town called Mountain View, Arkansas, and it a lot of folk music, hammered dulcimers and old time fiddle playing, and but at any rate, there was a bass player had came up there from Texas named Dean Reynolds, and Dean was there for a short amount of time, and I guess I would have been around 9 or 10, and Dean would show me, he would show me stuff, and he was a really great slap bass player. He wasn't showing me stuff like that. He just showing me like, instead of playing with a fist and being a kid, I didn't have a big span anyway, but he was still showing me, you can your hand, you should spread your hands and try to play the notes. And he took a lot of time with a kid, and there's not a lot of info about Dean Reynolds out there, but he moved back down to Austin and started playing with Freddie Powers, this guy named Freddie Powers, and Willie Nelson. And I think I think the name of the record is Stardust, a Willie Nelson record called Stardust, and Dean's playing on maybe half of that, and Bob Moore's playing the rest of the record. But Dean was, and if you can find footage of him, um, the footage I've seen, he's doing some slap stuff, and he was very old school with it, where he wasn't slapping out like this. He was one of these guys. It was just, I feel fortunate, and I always wanted to thank Dean for showing me that stuff. And by the time that my career had taken off and I went down to Texas, the first thing was I tried to look up Dean Reynolds so I could go thank him, and he'd already passed away. So, you know, I feel bad that I never got to thank him for that, but I think he knows now, you know.
I'm not familiar with name, but I'll definitely look him up.
Oh yeah,
And
there's some stuff I've found like on Austin City Limits.
uh-huh.
This show called Austin City Limits. If you go in and you type in like Willie Nelson, Merle Haggard, and Freddie Powers, there's a whole episode of um, of that on there, and you can definitely check them out.
I definitely will.
Mm.
He
Yeah.
seems like the guy that whose name deserved to be heard.
Yes. Yeah, he definitely. Unfortunately, he was in that time when you know we didn't have access to all the stuff we have now as far as phone cameras and what have you. So um, the only way you can find him is maybe on a few records or these obscure shows like Austin City Limits. You know, YouTube is a good source now,
Oh, it
fortunately
is.
and
Become
unfortunately.
it's becoming better and better, like with
Yeah,
with Slapstream and with all the clips that everyone is posting. So
sure.
we are all discovering like new amazing bass players and old amazing bass players that we did not have a chance like to hear about, or since not many people actually pay attention to bass players except bass players. Okay, and we
Yeah,
are the ones that make them make them jump and groove. So I
we
think the
we
bass
can
players
change
are-
we can
yes.
change we can change those notes really quick if needed. Eh,
Yes, yes.
yeah.
um you play, like we talked about it a little bit off screen. You played with so many amazing artists, and you play like lots of different music styles. uh do you consider yourself like a country player, or like a bluegrass player, or a rock and roll player, or you just switch like from um like depending what kind of session it is? So it's like do you have any preference as far as styles go?
I don't have a preference. I think we all march or we walk our heart, my heart, I should say, beats to whatever whatever music we came up with. Mine is definitely my dad was he was a big bluegrass fan, and so I came up hearing Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs records and Bill Monroe and Jimmy Martin, the popular bluegrass people of that day, and and he was also an old country music fan. It would be a old now. At that time it was modern. This was early early 70s, throughout the 70s. So coming up in that world, of course, that's my first introduction to music is hearing that, and my brother being a fiddle player, as he got to playing, he got into Texas Texas style fiddle playing, and more of that's where swing. I first started getting into the Western swing, Bob Wills, and so yeah, if I had to root it down, um, I I love swing. I love Western swing. I love that world, and that's when it really, when I heard that, when I heard Bob Wills and that swing, which led into a big band thing. That's when it just, my head just sort of blew up, and an introduction to Bob Moore, because the Bob Wills records I was hearing, Bob Moore had played on those particular records, the late '60s. When Bob Wills came here, and they had the horn sections and three fiddles, and yeah, it was just great. So yeah, it, it, I consider myself a chameleon as far as you know needing to play whatever form of music I get called to play. But if you really want, if I need to get my heart pumping and really take myself back to a place, I can put on some swing, some fiddle music, and I'm right back there.
So is that the reason why your band, Time Jumpers, started? Because of uh your love to of Western swing?
Yeah, the whole band, at that time. Well, and still, because that band is still in existence. I
Oh,
think I
really? Okay.
left. I left. maybe 6, 7 years back. 2014, I got so busy that I was gone more than I was there. So, but I
Mm.
was there for 14. Well, I must have left in 12 then. I was there 14 years, and that band started in '98, and
Oh, okay.
it was
Is that your
another.
first band in Nashville?
Um, yes, yeah. As far
Okay.
as like being a member of a band,
Okay. All
you're
right.
in you're in this band and you're committed somewhat. And that would have been like the first band because I was going out and playing with a different people here and there, you know,
Okay.
and a good friend of mine from Arkansas named Sean Camp had moved here in the '80s, and he was songwriting, and he's actually the guy that brought me to town, that got me to town anyway, got me to
Okay.
Nashville, and I was playing on his demos, and that sort of is what broke me into you know the whole scene, and unfortunately, Roy Husky, he was Roy Husky Jr. He was the guy in town, definitely
Hmm.
at that point, and very unfortunately, Roy had got sick not long after I landed here, and so a lot of stuff that I know Roy would have been on, I wound up getting called for because he was too sick to do, and then passed passed away shortly after. So
Yeah, he passed when he
unfortunate.
was 42 or some or something. He was really young.
He was young, and his father too. I'm a
The same age,
huge
right?
close. I think within a year or two of each other. Early 40s, very
Yeah.
early 40s.
So such a big loss for bass and music community. I mean, it's those guys played on so many amazing records, and it's actually how I discovered you for the first time when I was back in Serbia. Is I was researching about Roy, both Huskies, and
Hmm.
I found those "Will the Circle Be Unbroken" records, and at a black market in Belgrade in Serbia when I was a kid, and I was like, and then I got all of them. I mean, I mean, three, I believe there was at that time,
Hmm.
and I heard, you slapping on the within what was it, Nashville Bluegrass Band that you were a
Yes.
part of, and then you had like a couple solos, and I thought like, oh, I love this. You had those, you played slap, but you also played like some glissandos, and um, was it a song "I Know What It Means to Be Lonesome" or something? Is that on that record?
Man, that's been that was a long time ago, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, with the Nashville Bluegrass Band, because that was the second band that I was in when I got to town, and I was
Oh,
there
okay.
for 5 years, and done one record with those guys, and but yeah, I was
And
part of.
the Nitty Gritty record.
Yeah, and I was a member of
Okay.
Nashville Bluegrass Band when we done the Will the Circle Be Unbroken 3,
Oh,
and
okay.
but yeah, I mean, I remember going into the studio, and they asked, if we could do a bass solo in there, and I remembered hearing Junior Husky on the first Circle record, and he had taken um, oh man, I forget the name. He took a bass solo, a slap solo, maybe on "I Saw the Light" or something. And so in my mind, I was sitting there. I didn't want to emulate Junior Husky or Roy, you know, and but I wanted to. give a nod to Junior Husky and that whole thing. So that would have been the reason that I took that slap solo like that, you know. But I appreciate you bringing that up, and I appreciate you
Oh yeah,
buying.
yeah. I mean, that's how I
Yeah.
discovered you. And then I still love those records. I mean, it's so
Oh,
many
me too.
amazing
Yeah.
players. And then that's how I discovered Nashville Bluegrass Band. And you came to that band after Gene Liebe, I believe, right?
Yeah, Gene LeBay and
Liebe, okay. And
yeah,
and
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 sorry,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. Well, the bass player before Gene was um,
Mark
Mark
Hembry.
Mark Embry, and Mark was another guy after Dean Reynolds. Maybe when I was 12 or 13, Mark was playing with Bill Monroe, and my brother and I went to a fiddle contest at this bluegrass festival, and Bill Monroe was there, and Mark was another guy that took this kid to the side, me being the kid, and showed me some stuff, just again pretty much like left hand fingering and how he would pull the string and but Mark was another guy and a really really great bass player, and Gene LeBay too. They're both really good players, you know.
Yeah, I'm familiar with both of them. And I also like since we're talking about Nashville Bluegrass Band, uh, another solo that you did with them, and I believe it was like 20th anniversary of the band or something like that. It was like a traveling railroad man or something like that. That you also did
Yeah,
another slap solo. Sorry, I'm a
yeah,
slap bass fanatic.
yeah. I don't. Yeah, I should go back and visit that record, But I appreciate you. I appreciate you bringing this up. But
Oh yeah, of
yeah.
course. I mean, when I heard heard you play on Will the Circle Be Unbroken, then back then I was doing research about everyone that even slapped the one note, and then I found
Mhm.
Nashville Bluegrass Band, and then I found that anniversary record where I heard the that song as well. And I thought like, wow, this guy has great intonation, using all these cool glissandos, and it's playing like a great precise slap, and I was like, wow, amazing. So it was kind of like a different approach than other bass players to slap. So I thought it was very unique and cool.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah.
Uh, s- since we're talking about those like Will the Circle Be Unbroken records, I found, so you might be able actually to clarify this if you know. I was not able to find that information. I noticed a name, Alice Paget, bass player who played on those records, and he's actually credited for the slap bass solo on "I Saw the Light." No, no, no. So Lonesome Fiddle Blues. um,
Ah,
so did he? Do you know if he played that, or it was just like mistake on the record that that Roy played? Because for me, it sounded like Roy's style, and then I'm not very familiar with Ellis. Are you by any
yeah.
chance?
I've never heard of them. You talking
Okay.
about the first Circle record?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, that would have been Junior,
Okay.
Roy's dad.
I know the Junior played on that record, and then that he played. Um, I mean, on all these other records, but and that he played on "I Saw the Light," but
Hmm.
Ellis is credited for that other song. So, "Lonesome Fiddle Blues." So
Yeah.
I was wondering,
Well,
is that
it's. I mean, I've never heard that.
oh, okay?
I've never heard that. I've just always known that. I've always known that Junior was the
Oh,
guy,
okay.
Junior Husky. you know.
maybe I,
But
that was my thing too. I thought like it's I researched Ellis, and then I found out that he played with Vassar Clemens. I'm not sure how to pronounce that on Hillbilly Jazz, but it was just nothing similar. So I always thought this is probably a mistake. I would my guess would be that Junior played both of those songs because they count. It's his style. So
yeah, and I've got the double, the double LP of that, and I've not even seen that guy's name listed on it, and so I don't know, but it's not, it's not for me really to say. I
yeah,
would hate to I would
I
hate to deny Ellis of the credit that
yeah.
he's due if
This
he
is
done it.
this is me as a slap bass fan, like trying to discover like things that were kind of like bugging me. Maybe it was just that edition that I had of the record that's had that like had that name, and then anyway. But let's we are sure that Husky played on all those amazing records, and then I'm also pretty sure that he played on both of those songs. But what my point was that I was that's how through those records I was discovering your work as well. So besides these few songs that I mentioned, which other recorded albums or songs would you recommend for people that are interested in particularly your slap bass technique? Which records should they get?
For slapping,
Yes.
um, man, that's a tough question because it's I have to try to remember. I know there was a lot of not a lot, but quite a bit of slapping on Greg Allman. Greg Allman done a record called Low Country Blues, and covering a lot of old. There was a lot of older blues tunes, of course, and I've done quite a bit of slapping on that, and it's just I don't know that's the one that's coming to mind. Um, yeah, I don't know. A person would just have to seek it out. Ray Ann and Giddens. I can't remember the record. 2 or 3 records back that Tomorrow is my turn. That's the name of the record. Tomorrow is my turn. And I remember doing quite a bit of slapping on that record too. You know.
Any solos on those records?
Um, no, I don't think so. No, no, just a lot of parts. You know,
Okay.
on Ray Ann and I always say her name. Forgive me for saying her name wrong. Ray Ann and Giddens, or I always want to say Ray On, but there's two bass players, two upright, two double bassists on some of those songs, and it was myself and a really phenomenal young bassist that's moved here named Paul Coert, and both of us are playing on probably 4 or 5. Well, I should scoot it back to 3 or 4 tunes. Both of us are playing, and tomorrow is my turn. Is this old Nina? I think it was Nina's. It's a. I know it as an older Nina Simone tune, and but Paul, he's a great arco player, and he's playing all the arco parts, and we're in the same room, shoulder to shoulder, and I sort of noticed that he's putting his bow down, and Paul's in solo tuning. His bass is tuned up for solo tuning, and but I see him put his bow down, and I guess he wanted to be the pitch player at that point, and so I started playing the harmony lines to him, and we switched. We actually switched parts. He became the bass player. So that's happening on that record too. That was a fun record, really fun record. Yeah, she's beautiful singer and person. So yeah, maybe
I
check
have to
that
check
out.
it out. That sounds amazing.
But there's
And then
there's
whenever
quite a bit of slapping on that too. Like she done some really old
okay,
tunes that needed to reach back to that period and and in my
interesting.
mind, I was thinking more of like, and even on Greg's record, I was thinking more along the lines of like a Willie Dixon, you know,
Okay.
more Willie Dixon, because these guys, man, Willie Dixon, Potts Foster, Bob Moore, whoever you mentioned, the Huskies, that's that's how they felt when they played. I'm not here to fill their shoes, and I'm here to walk in my own shoes. And but with that being said, my interpretation, of a Willie Dixon thing is what I've tried to do on those records. You know.
I have to, absolutely to check it out. It's tomorrow is my turn is the title of the album, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
of Ray Ann and Giddens, and then the Low Country
Okay.
Blues is Greg Allman. That's the title of that record. And those are two records. I'm really, I'm really happy that I got to be a part of. All the records I'm happy I get to be a part of.
Do
But
you have
those two
any clue
stand out
on
in my
how many
mind.
records you played on?
No, no,
It's gonna be
no, because
hundreds, right?
it's all moving forward. It's I don't. Cause a lot of times I leave it there. It's already happened, and um, that's how I felt at that moment when those records were done, and if I'd done them tomorrow, they would come out differently. Because that's how I would be feeling at that moment. And so I don't really, I'm proud of the body of work, but I don't. I try not to go back. I try to go forward. So I don't really know.
I think that's the best approach. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta
It's,
find those two records. It's you have like such a big discography behind you. So I to be honest, I haven't heard about these two, so I have to check them out. Um, you, as I mentioned in the little introduction of the video, like some of the names that you played on, and I want to ask you almost about everyone. How was it playing? With Johnny Cash? How was it playing with Elton John? Like, I mean, those are guys that are like from such a like some different genres that you cannot even think about that like that somebody would play with those two guys like at a around the same period of time. And then how do you switch from genre to genre? How do you what's your approach? What was your approach when you played with Johnny Cash? What was your approach when you played with Elton John or Robert Plant?
well, when you mentioned Johnny Cash, and it just, it makes me smile, and he and June both were whatever you have conjured up in your mind of what kind of people they were, then that's probably true to form. And but I thought of them. They felt like grandparents, and I I I met Johnny through doing a June Carter Cash record, and I would have to drive. At that time, they had this cabin, and the cabin still exists, and that's where we were doing June's second. I guess it was her second record of that period. Dave Rowe might have played on the first one, and Wildwood Flower, I think, is the name of the record that I played on. But at any rate, to get to the cabin, I would have to go to their house, and they would open the gate to let me into the cabin. And you twist through the woods, and it's just that. It was a cabin in the middle of the woods, and but the first time I went there, I was really nervous. I pull up to the house and knock on the door, And man, the door opens up and it's Johnny Cash. And he done the thing. And he opens the door and he went, "Hello, I'm Johnny Cash." And it was like, no shit, you know. And all of a sudden, I'm like a 4-year-old kid, and Johnny, in my mind, he looked like he was 11 feet tall, you know. And he had so much charisma around him, but I didn't feel that. I mean, I immediately felt at ease. He just sort of, both of them just sort of brought me in. You know, he, "Hello, I'm Johnny Cash." I introduced myself, and he was like, "Well, come on in." And then we went downstairs, and they're having lunch, and I had already ate. You know, before the session. It's what, you know, as a session musician, they're going to, "Hey, you need to eat, you know, show up prepared." And I show up and they're having lunch. And I had to eat again. It was like going over to my grandparents where it was like, "You got to have some of this pie," you know. And so anyway, I just learned don't eat before the sessions because I would go there and you have to have lunch with them. And, and then later on, you know, when Johnny done American 5 and 6, you know, especially on American 6, June, when I came in, June had already passed away, and you know, Johnny was, it was they'd shut all the lights off in the studio. It'd just be almost pitch black in there, and so I couldn't make charts or anything, and you just had to go. You just had to play the music, and it was so heartfelt, and a lot of those songs, you know, obviously about mourning the loss of his soulmate, and but it was a great experience, and I know I played on the last song that he ever sang, called Engine 143, and I think it's I think it's what it, yeah, Engine 143, and you know, that was one I remember getting a certificate, a Grammy thing, and that was one that I really wanted, you know. But that's a John Carter, his son, told me that was the last song that he ever recorded, and I approached that stuff. I wasn't thinking. I was trying to think. You know, this is where we are in this period of life, and Johnny's in his last stage, and I'm in the middle stage, and so I didn't approach it thinking Sun Music or, you know, that period, or, you know, what Marshall Grant would have done, or what Dave Rowe had done, or you know, Joe Allen when he was playing electric bass. And I just approached it as this is how we are today, you know. And the same with Elton, or whatever I'm doing, you know. Obviously with Elton, I have went back to Yellow Brick Road and started there, and moved forward with his music, so I would have an idea, you know, how he wanted bass lines to move, and and Bernie Topping, you know, he writes all the lyrics, and so I went in with that knowledge of, cause you know, the Elton, his stuff is pretty deep. It's real deep, and you know, with chords, and how it's moving, and you know, stuff that sounds like it's almost a modulation, but it's really not. It's just all built in, and you know, parts being stacked, and Elton will use all 10 fingers on the piano keys when he plays. He's not a shy man, you know. But that's how I approach those records. So, you know, we were in the moment.
It's thanks for sharing that Johnny Cash story. It's very personal and amazing.
Well,
Wow.
um, I'll never forget it. I'll just I can right now I can go back in my mind and know those pictures, and a lot of that stuff was filmed. I don't know that it ever come out. I've begged for it. June's record and Johnny's. A lot of that stuff, it was filmed, and a lot of photos. Um, some photos I've seen, of these really black and white pictures, and they really are, because it was Johnny. The only light that was in the studio was a stand light, so he could see the lyrics, but otherwise, it would hurt his eyes, like natural sunlight and stuff. That was my experience at the time. And but at any rate, there would be photographers there taking pictures, and the musicians were around him. And Johnny was, there. Here's the song, and it was just it was a beautiful, beautiful experience, and I feel very grateful to be there, and just my I loved them. I still do. You know.
I can see that. Like, do you have any special story to share about Elton John or any other uh, artists that you played with? I mean, the list is endless, so I'm not gonna even try to
And
mention all the names.
they're all they're all they're all very special. Every artist, and you know what? In my mind, I don't, you know, Elton or Diana Krall or Johnny Cash or whatever name you want to throw out there, what every name that is. Um, you have Elton in my mind versus, you know, Joe bass fiddle, and if I'm working for Joe, he is as big and as important as Elton John to me. It doesn't matter. I'm going to give you everything I've got. You know, so I have no stories. They're all great. They're all great, and you know,
I
it's
think
all
that's
about
the
respect.
only
It's
correct
all
approach.
yes, yes, and it was. I never anticipated an Elton John thing, especially on the upright bass, but I'm glad I got to do it, and
How did that happen?
I have no idea. I don't
They,
know.
so he called you just right out of the blue, or
Well, yeah, coordinator did, but
okay?
uh, and Leon Russell was a part of that. Uh, the Union, I think it was called. It is called the Union, and I was on tour. I know when I got the call, I was on tour with Elvis Costello, and we were
Hmm.
in Europe, and uh, our kids were still at home. Then they were teenagers, and but at any rate, I made a deal with them, because they were like, "Dad, we need a swimming pool. We need a swimming pool." And it was like, "Well, hell, we don't need a swimming pool. The last thing we need is a swimming pool, Outside of it, it being the cost of the swimming pool, you know, there's going to be the mate, all the shit that comes with a swimming pool. We don't want a swimming pool. I don't want a swimming pool." And but I made a deal with them. I don't know why this came up. I said, "You know what? We'll get a swimming pool if Elton John ever calls the house." Because I thought Elton John is never going to call the house. I'll never get an Elton John call. I'm in Europe with Elvis Costello on this tour, and I get this call, from a coordinator, and I'm looking at dates, and do you have this? So I go back, get my book, flip it open. Yeah, I got these dates open. Who's the artist? And she said Elton John. And I said I need to call you back. And so anyway, I immediately get off the phone and call my house. And my wife answers, yeah, so what's going on? I said, you better call a bulldozer. and tell them to start digging the hole in the backyard. He says, what's the deal? And I said, Elton John called. We're getting a swimming pool. So I had to stay. I mean, I kept up my end of the bargain. Elton John called, and we got a swimming pool. So.
Well,
It
you're a
all
man of
worked
your
out.
word,
I am. I've kept with my end of the deal. But when we sold the house, when we sold that house and moved to our current house, and our girls they're grown and gone, and but I was glad to see that pool go. I'm glad to see it go, man. I ain't cutting any more deals either. To hell with that stuff. But I'm glad I got the pool, and I'm glad that I got to do that.
Wow. Have you told that story to Elton John ever?
I don't think I did. I don't think I told it to him. But I enjoyed my time with him, and I remember. Um, eh, I hope you like this. There was a song, I can't remember the name of the tune or the name of the song, but it was a Leon Russell. It was going to be a Leon. It is a Leon Russell. Maybe he wrote it. I'm not sure, but it was all his feature. And Bernie, I guess Bernie Taupin had written it. And I knew Bernie. We'd already got talking. I knew he was a big country fan, just a big Southern country hillbilly fan. And I say hillbilly respectful because I am a hillbilly. Uh, but Leon comes in, and of course, I'm aware of Leon, but I knew that he had that Tulsa, Oklahoma thing. Like just this different way of playing a shuffle. Ways would swing the eights, and but he come in and started this song, and I started doing a slap bass thing on it. And and slap. That's the only song that I slap on that record. And so anyway, it goes on, and the record comes out, and we go out and we tour some dates and do some TV stuff with it, and it all comes to an end, and we're all back in our respective places, and it's like 3-4 months later, I'm doing a Dixieland jazz gig here in town, and I look up, and here comes Leon Russell in, and it's at this Cajun restaurant. We take a break. I'm going to the restroom, and Leon, he's sitting in one of these little motorized wheelchairs, and he's facing away from the bathroom door, which I thought was odd, but he's just sitting there. So I can't get into the restroom. No one can because he's blocking the door. So I go up, and ask, hey, Leon, you need some help getting into the restroom? And he said, no, I'm just trying to figure out where I can go turn this motorized wheelchair around, and we sort of laughed. And I said, man, that record was a lot of fun. It sure was great. And he's just looking at me like I'm an alien, and he said, that what record? And I said, the Union, Elton and yourself. And he said, well, what's your name? And I looked at him like, well, hell, man, I've done the tour. I played on the record, but I wasn't offended. I'm thick-skinned enough to, And I looked at him and I said, well, I'm telling him who I was. And I said, I played bass on that record. And he looked at me and he lit up and he went, oh, Slappy. And that's how he remembered me, is that I played slap bass on that song. And, and I seen him like a month later at the Symphony Hall with Diana Krall. And I seen him go out and have the same exact conversation. Man, that record sure was good, blah, blah. Well, who are you? And I tell him my name again. He went, oh, yeah, Slappy. So he just associated slap bass with that. He never knew my name, never knew my name, but he just knew me as Slappy. Oh, well, yeah, that's that boy that plays slap bass. I guess that's what was in his mind. But it's still funny to me. But
Wow, that's a cool
Slappy.
nickname.
Yeah, well, but I'm not really a slap bass player. You know, I mean, I don't consider myself a slap player by all means. You know,
Well, and what is that? What is the name of the song? I remember that you said it's the record is called Union, but what is the name of the song?
I can't remember. I can't remember the title of the tune, but if you look that record up, it you know, you can scroll
Okay.
down, I guess, and find it. You know, because it's like, you know, like a that would be the core groove in the way that, you know, because Leon, man, he's got like a really funky piano thing that it puts itself, for lack of a better term, there's a crack in there that the bass can just, you know, for that groove, the bass can just fit right in the middle of it. And, you know, and there's I can't remember if there was double drums on that or just one drummer. But it all lent itself. I just remember when they set that groove up, I immediately went there. It was like, man, this would be perfect, you know. And stuff are just like verses or single slap, and then you can sort of get into doubles and triples, and I think they might have been a play out on that song. So, you know, of course, on a fade, everybody's got to say, "Look at me, mom," you know. Hey, here's my moment, you know. But yeah, I can't remember the title of the tune, but it's definitely on that record.
I will check out the whole record. You know, I gotta hear Slappy.
Slap you, man. Yeah, yeah. It's just funny to me, you know. And I thought, you know, hey, we've all been in that situation, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
where the artist can't, you know. And I do the same thing, you know. We've got to have, or I do. I've got to make a connection, you know. Even musically, it's got to make sense to me, you know, like putting together a puzzle,
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely. Do you who would you say is the artist that you played slap bass the most with?
I I don't think
Time
there's any
Jumpers?
particular. Not much of the time jumpers, you know, because that was a swing thing. There was a couple slap things in time jumpers, but you know that was more just, you know, just a swinging 2 or 4
Okay.
beat thing. But yeah, I don't think there's any particular. I can't say
Artist.
there's a particular artist that it would have been a slap oriented thing.
Yeah, that's interesting because like lots of players that play slap are into rockabilly or psychobilly, and then over there you have to play slap all the time. I mean, if you don't play slap, you don't play that style. But those
Yeah,
players like uh don't use a texture too much of the that I would say. Um they don't use a bow or the new pizzicato, and then it's a different approach. And then players that play more standard bass, like with pizzicato or a bow, and then if they use slap, then it's just amazing. And then it's you just provide like completely different texture and the sound, and then people get really attracted to that, I think.
yeah, I think so
um,
too. You know, if you can, well, again, being in the session world, especially, goes back earlier talking about being a chameleon. You know, I mean, you walk in and one session might be bluegrass, and the next session might be a country thing, and then the next session might be a rock thing. One could be, you know, I don't want to say Americana, but you know, I'm going to say
yeah,
Americana because that covers a large umbrella. But um, and at one point, you know, I might be asked to do a slap part, or you know, I just don't know. I don't know, but
mhm.
I feel like I need. you hit on a very uh, a very good important statement there that when that thing is brought out, it can be used as a tool, and that's how I view it. It's a tool, you know. And I'm not a good arco player, but I've got enough knowledge of it that I can get by with, doing definitely doing whole notes or half
Hmm.
notes. I can't say that I could pound out a solo arco wise, but I can do enough. I've got enough of that knowledge to get a part done. You know, and I've done it.
Yeah.
I've done it. We've A lot of us have had to do it. I'm sure you have. A lot with movie scenes. You
Hmm.
know, just needing that effect and so I would do an arco part for that.
I think it's
And
almost necessary, kind of like to be able to to do all these different approaches, because if you want to be a session musician, and then it's like, oh, I want to, if you're a bass player and call you like to be a bass player, you kind of have to know at least a little bit to play slap, pizzicato, and arco. And then
yeah,
if so,
it's
I think that's why I'm trying to establish slap more, so that more people use it on a higher level, and then so that we can hear more slap
yeah.
in
I
movies, commercials, or whatever.
I agree, and I love slap bass playing. It just, but I don't like it when it's been again, for lack of a better term, I don't like it when it's been bastardized and people just use it as is almost like a scapegoat.
Hmm.
Where they don't have the knowledge. Maybe they can't do uh, um, a moving pitch part. So it's like, well, I'll just slap because they use it as a crutch,
Yeah,
and,
yeah, yeah.
and that's what happened. It seems like that's what happened here, and I'm sure it's happened in other places, but it sort of turned me against it for a long time because I heard people using it, and they wasn't using it in taste, and it was a bad sound, and it was annoying, very annoying, and it was like, man, this is, if you can't play, you just, take the time to learn how to play, you
Yeah, yeah.
know, but don't just use that as a crutch, and it was all just about show, and it sort of turned me against it for a long time. I rebelled against it almost, and
Hmm.
but I like how you just said that, that to bring it to the forefront and let it know that it really is a good art form, and used right, it's great. It's as good as a Ray Brown solo,
Yes,
or
I like that.
a Bob Moore country bass line, or Junior Husky, or whoever your person is, your person of
Yes,
choice. Edgar Meyer, Arco solo. I don't. This list could go on and on,
absolutely.
but but yeah, I love what you're doing, and you're playing too, man. Because
Oh, thank you.
yeah, and I know when we talked previously, talking about everyone having a stride, or the way their heart beats, or where their mind is, that you know, I always joke around, and it's like I wake up every morning in four. You know, I just
Hmm.
always wake up just hearing, a four beat, whether it's swinging or, rocking, whatever it is. But I know you was like, well, I sort of march to 7/8. And that's,
Yeah, yeah,
we all do. We all do. We have that place that we go back to.
yeah. I love, like, I since you mentioned that, I love all time signatures, and I love slap bass in all time signatures. It gives so much lift for any song that it's in 7, 9, 11, 13, or whatever. And it's once you get it, it's very groovy, and it's very, danceable, and I think that more people should play in all-time signatures and listen to all-time music.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it'll make their head explode, or make your head feel like it's going to explode. It did mine the first time I heard it, and
It's
yeah,
it's interesting. When I was a kid, I mean that music was always around, so I didn't appreciate it too much. But I think it's in my in my DNA. But I was always into rockabilly and American music, so I was thinking, you know, my heart beats in a shuffle groove, but I have these you know odd time signatures in my DNA, so it's like all right.
yeah,
It's
yeah. I guess that's what mine must be in the in four because there's a joke around about stiff white people. They only dance from the knees down. So if you gave them like maybe an extra beat in five or seven or nine or something, there's going to be a fight. People are going to start fighting. Because I mean, hey, what? Bam,
it's music is one, and music is one, and then it's so much beautiful music all over the world. I'm always trying to
Oh,
keep my ears open, for different scales, different melodies, different approaches. It's just mind-boggling, just
it
dedicating
really
your life
is.
life to music, and you'll never hear everything. You still
No,
search. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's what I was saying earlier. I don't. I'm proud of what's happened, but it's moving forward, and part of that moving forward is discovering what's out there. You know, whether it be Balkan. If you haven't discovered Balkan, then check out Balkan music. If you haven't
Yeah.
discovered Willie Dixon, check out Willie Dixon. Or if you're not familiar with, you know, Duck Dunn that played on all those great Memphis Stax records, electric bass, I'll go check out. All I'm saying is, if you have blinders on, you're never going to learn anything. And pull the blinders off, and Uh, I don't care if you're a bluegrass player or country player or jazz player. Just pull the blinders off, and I feel like for me, I've been really lucky enough to be surrounded with people that have pulled the blinders off and they're willing to explore and find music. Just seek it out and bring that in. Introduce that into what you do. You know. That's what I done. I don't. Again, I never came to fill anyone's shoes. I'm not looking to fill anyone's shoes. I've got my own shoes, and that's all I want to do. I just want to play the bass. Hell, I don't. I cannot be. I can't be Ray Brown, and I can't be Bob Moore. I'm Roy Husky, or definitely Edgar Meyer. I can't be you. All I can be is myself, and so, and I figure being myself is exploring and bringing all of those influences in, and trying to use them. That goes back to crossing genres too. Mentioning rock and
Yes.
roll, or Johnny Cash, or whatever. If you discover that stuff, I feel like that has helped me. Especially with no formal education. You know, and
I absolutely agree. I think it's the goal for every musician is to find its own voice, its own sound, its own tone, and that's
yes,
kind of lifelong search, really. And then since your approach changes, but once you find your own thing, you you own that. You're not trying to copy someone. You're trying to draw inspiration, sure, and then learn, steal knowledge, but but you have your own kind of stamp, so that
yeah,
you're
yes,
recognizable. And then I think that's life is too short, just to you try to be Ray Brown or Edgar Meyer or Bob Moore,
Yeah.
and then we're never gonna reach that, and it's pointless, So
You're gonna
I
you're
100%
gonna
agree on that.
yeah, you're gonna miss out on a lot of great things. You're missing out on a
Absolutely,
lot of
yeah.
great things. And there's greatness in all of it. I don't care. You know, um, well, I'll use Diana Krall for instance. Beautiful jazz player, and I'm not a jazz bass player. I've never been in a jazz band in my life, and I get called to do Diana's record, and that's one thing to do a recording date because you have the time and the luxury to figure stuff out. And but when I went out on the road, it was like, oh, whoa, and it was really intimidating. But she was really great because I had something that she wasn't so familiar with. And I'm coming and going, well, what about Oscar Peterson? Or, what do they do right here? And how do you make this movement in a flat five? And she was wanting and interested in country music. So, it was a meeting of all those worlds. And I was fortunate enough to be in that band for 5 years. I was there, and I guess 2 or 3, maybe 4 records. And, but they had no blinders, and they taught me. I say they as a band, Kareem Riggins drumming, and Anthony Wilson and Patrick Warren and Stuart Duncan. That was the band while I was there, and those guys were just open to everything. Like we would get on the bus and spend hours just looking at music, and those guys we would watch like George Jones and Johnny Paycheck and Ray Price country stuff, and then they would flip over and we'd be watching Monk and you know Dexter Gordon, whoever your person is. We get into this jazz world, and everyone was just sharing their knowledge, and it was beautiful, because it was like a melting pot. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where music it should be it's one language. It's the common language, and if everybody's on board with that, we can all share that knowledge and learn from one another. And I think that helps develop styles too. You know,
Absolutely. And you mentioned earlier that one of your favorite styles is Western swing, and talking
love it.
about, mixing, you know, uh, bluegrass and country, like with jazz and swing. And then that's kind of how you
Well, you were
got
talking
that.
about when you were talking about those moving bass lines. Um, being a kid, I couldn't. Dad would get pissed off because I'd run his car battery down. He'd go out and get ready to go somewhere, and the only place that I could hear the bass parts was in his car. You know,
Oh,
and I would lay out there in the front seat with the key switch on, listening to the radio. And then Dad get ready to go somewhere, and the battery would be dead. And then he'd be pissed off. But again, we didn't have a lot of money, so and it was in a time when there was no YouTube or cheap stereos, and I'd just have to just lay out there and listen to the radio all day to hope to find those parts. And anyway, what I'm getting at is those lines, a lot of times it would be the tic tac, the 6 string tic tac playing lines, and I would have to get the bass parts from that, and they were just moving, all the time. And the Western swing, you were mentioning swing, and hillbilly jazz, ever how you want to say it, and then the bluegrass, it had uh, Flat and Scruggs, Bill Monroe, it had a swing to it, and it's all of that. During that time, it's just one big melting pot. Chicago blues, mentioned Willie Dixon, Pops Foster in New Orleans, and other players coming up through. And that the Edgar Willis, the guy played bass on those Ray Charles records, I think are brilliant parts. But I hear that also is that thing where these lines are just moving underneath, and I would lay out in that car and hear these parts, and then try to put it on the bass, thinking it might be the bass, but it's a tic tac, and I think that helped a lot as far as now. I don't want to just hear things, just root 5, root 5, root 4, 4. There's more that can happen in those spaces, that as long as it doesn't get in the way of the lyric, or whoever's playing the melody lines. But I feel like as bass players we can mold, help shape those places for that soloist or that singer, complement each other. And anyway, I went down a rabbit hole, but it's all that merging of.
It's important. It's important. You played lots of tours. You play lots of shows, and you played on lots of records. Do you prefer playing live, or you prefer doing studio work?
I love being in the studio.
Oh,
I
okay.
really do. And it's I like playing live, but I've just I'm I still got the stage fright. I mean, it's a frightful thing, and um, unless I'm
Is your
comfortable
approach
with it.
different when you play in the same songs in a studio or live?
Yeah, it's different. It's different. I mean, it's obviously we're going to feed off of that adrenaline playing live. There should be that adrenaline and that edge. And again, with Diana, learning so much. Um, she never asked us to play the same thing every night, and it didn't have to be the same tempo. It could be. She encouraged that. She wanted different notes and that movement, and the only way to get that is playing live. So definitely, you know, you walk out and do the thing. So
It's yeah, it's a different. It's definitely different, especially if somebody wants you to play exactly the same. If an artist wants you to play exact same thing that you played on the record, and then I always want to change it a little bit when I play live, especially if I'm on tour, and then but it's sometimes if you got to do the same line, if it's very recognizable, you got to do what you got to do.
well, yeah, I agree with you 100%. That's part of the deal. If that's a very important thing right there. You said there's you can't get too far away from it. Definitely, I mean, people are buying those tickets and filling those seats because they want to hear that artist, and you got to, going back to Diana, for instance. I mean, those people, they're wanting to hear those love tunes, and if you're doing the look of love, you got to stay true to that to point. Uh, it might be slower, faster night to night, and we can sub different notes, but it's still got to stay that. You shouldn't take it too far out on the limb that you get away from it and go above people's heads. Or the same with Elton, with I guess that's why they call it the blues. I never was asked to play the exact thing, but I knew it had to stay that. Those songs. If a band is all playing on the same team and we're all listening and playing music together, it's naturally it should naturally do that. The song is going to dictate what it needs. You know, that's my philosophy anyway.
Absolutely. I mean, I agree with that philosophy. That's the only philosophy that makes sense. Every song is different, and I would say like you sometimes every song is different if you play it. It could be even different if you play it live or if you play in studio.
Very, very
So
much.
and you have to also see how the audience feel. I mean, at least the the artist has to feel that, and then like you're doing you're checking out audience, and then the singer or like band leader, and then trying to do our best thing to support um everything. I would love to hear you play if possible. Is your bass somewhere close by? Can you slap a
It
little?
can be.
Can you play a little?
Yeah, I'll try my best.
Oh
Let me
yeah,
grab the
that's great.
bass. And I'm also going to take 5 seconds. I'll be right back, but I'm going to let my dog out too. Because
Oh,
the
okay, no
dog's
worries.
looking
All
at me
right,
like,
we're
I
waiting
don't,
for a few seconds.
my dog doesn't want to, my dog's looking at me like, oh shit, I don't want to hear this again. So be right. And I'll grab the bass in the meantime.
Awesome. All right, while Dennis is getting ready, I would like to thank all of you for joining us and to being here. If you haven't slapped that subscribe button, make sure to do that now and slap that like. And if you have a comment, who you would like me to feature next, have a favorite bass player, favorite slap bass player, please let me know in the comments under the video. So not the ones on the side where you're live chatting. All right, bass is ready, Dennis is ready. Let's do this.
This thing was in tune one time. All right. Um, I'll just give you a piece. We've mentioned New Orleans. So there's an old tune that I remember called Darkness on the Delta. Very fitting, very slow and moody. And anyway, I'll give you a piece of that if I can remember it. There you go. Darkness on the Delta.
All right, any chance we can hear you a little bit of slapping?
Yeah, I'm
how,
trying to
how do you feel
remember.
about that?
I know what it means to be lonesome. I'm trying to remember that tune because I would try that just as That's just because it comes to mind. Yeah, I remember that. So, if it was in G, all right, I'll try to. I don't remember that solo, but anyway, if it was a 1-6-2-5 thing, this would be the end of whoever solo. I think that would be sort of the it, but I'm not sure. I need to go back and check too. It's pretty early to be slapping in the mornings.
Oh, is it what? Yeah, yeah. A quick question. I always like asking this, like to my slapping guests. Um,
Mm.
do you have a certain terminology for all these different slap patterns that you use? Like, do you use that like a single slap, double slap, triple slap thing, or you have different names that you use it? Is there?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's all opinionated, you know? Yeah, in my mind, I think of the that being one. That is a slap, you know, and hitting this to me would be a double, right?
I agree. Yeah, yeah. That's how I call it. Yeah.
And if you get in, I know the double would be some people. Man, it's all opinions. Yeah, I mean, obviously that's two.
Yes.
One, and then two. And then three. And so on and so
Yeah, yeah,
forth.
yeah.
And then, um,
I'm glad you mentioned that because I completely
the
agree with that. And then, I'm trying to make it more
and then
standardized so people actually can see like from, different perspectives, but I
yeah,
also want to listen to everyone's approach.
yeah. And then there's the drum slams. I think of them as that or a triplet. Because I guess technically this would be a triplet. So the drum slam to me would be that thing, right?
Okay.
That's how right, because
Okay.
it's like a I mean that's like a drum slam,
Yeah. I
and
usually call it a roll because it's kind of like
it
it's
is a
a
roll. Yeah,
yeah.
right. I mean that would be, and because I would use it on I've done it a lot on various records with the drummer, so we could create almost like this illusion that you don't know who's doing what part unless you
Mhm.
get the stems. But if you hear it as a record, like on this record, Raising Sam with Robert Plant and Alison Krauss, Jay Bellarose and myself, we've worked a lot together. And we tried to create this thing, and we have created this thing where you don't really know who's doing what. Is it a rim? Is it the sticks like on the bass drum, or is it the bass itself? And so I love doing that. And uh, just an instant, for instance, with a groove, no solo or anything, just a groove. But like, let me start that. you know, that'd just be an instant of just grabbing that, and sometimes grabbing the roll, as you call it, of just, and come on, grab it there, maybe. Whatever you feel, it's going to be a moment thing for me, you know.
Absolutely. And but besides those patterns that you played, so is there any other pattern that you played in slap? I think that I heard you kind of doing quadruple as well, like earlier. Um,
Yeah. Well, you mean like the roll quadruples,
like when you played,
or
let me
or
grab
uh,
my bass real quick.
you talking about this, like that thing?
Uh, yes.
Yeah, um I've done that again quite a bit. There was a movie called I Walked the Line.
Okay.
Um, I don't know, a few years back, and Johnny Cash. It was about Johnny Cash, and there was a lot of slap on that movie, of course, because it's sort of built around that, and Marshall Grant. I remember getting a call, and I would give anything to have recorded that. But Marshall calls, I answered the phone, picked it up, hello, and he went, yeah, is this so and so? Yes. He said, this is Marshall Grant, and I'm about to fall over because he was the original Tennessee too, and he said, man, I just seen that movie, I Walked the Line. I hated it. Terrible movie, and I'm sitting there holding the phone going, oh crap, why are you calling me? Now you're going to tear me up for playing the part. And he said, but um, I got to say, when I heard that, I watched that movie and I pulled over when I got back in my car and just cried, because I feel like you gotten the part. And it was a very special call to get. And, and I'm glad I got to do the movie. And with that being said, you know, I'd studied so much old footage, like old footage of those guys playing. And Marshall in the early days, he didn't do walk ups or anything, I mean, he just played Route 5 straight to a 4 chord or whatever. And I remember in that movie, the producer one day opened the door and he says, you get to do walk ups today, and it was in the 60s when they straight up. But anyway, with that being said, those quads and hearing the records, I thought it was him doing it, but it was the reverb a lot of times doing the slapback, and that's how I came up with that quad. That's how I would hear the quad thing, and I done it on that movie where, but giving the note first, and that's what Marshall was doing. He wasn't those early days. I don't think he was doing that. He was playing. That dun dun and Johnny, a lot of that's Johnny with that dollar bill or whatever piece of paper looped into the strings, and when all that's in the pot, it sounds like that. So I done that on that movie quite a bit, where it was like, and I do it now as a mock slap. You know, there's quite a lot of records actually that I've done that on. I'll give them a note first, just to, and just go back and as a mock slap, but at least you have the note, and especially for movies and what have you in today's time with all the surround sound, you know, it's important to have, you know, to have that first, and then that can be added later. It's not an easy thing to do. If you can, just that walk up, if you're doing that mock, I mean, you need to mock the walk-ups and everything if you can, you know.
I like
But
that approach.
that would be
Never heard, never heard Marshall Grant doing that thing. What you're talking like.
no, he
Uh,
didn't. He didn't do it. I'm
yeah,
saying when
yeah.
I first
Your
when
approach.
we get yeah when that movie came on board for me, and they called the dates, I immediately started going into that world, you know, really studying it. And when I heard it, to hear and of course you've listened to it a lot too, with all the reverb and Johnny doing that boom chicka boom chicka thing. Uh, to hear all that together, it sounds like that's how I was hearing it. But Marshall, I
Yeah,
know
yeah.
Marshall was just going, he was just, or but early on in the first, and he would let his notes ring all the way across, like a, and, and I got the story from him that he and Luther actually drew straws to see who was going to be the guitarist and who was going to be the bass player, you know. Because those guys had never really played. I mean, Marshall had never played bass. He didn't know how to play bass, and you know, but that's what it became. And after watching a lot of that footage and everything, and when he called, he was like, "Man, I really appreciate." He appreciated that I'd done my best to emulate what he had done, instead of going, "Oh, well, man, it's got to be," it wasn't like, "Oh, well, look." I wanted to really pay tribute to Marshall on that movie, and it was something that I would never do personally. You know, to go to a four chord, it's so hard for me to play that fifth all the way over. You know what I mean? And I would have never done that, but I knew on that to make that movie as right musically as we could make it for the time, that's what had to be played, and that's what or well, so I really tried to pay honor to Marshall, you know, and Johnny too, Luther Perkins, and because they just those Luther and Marshall may have not really known what they were doing in the beginning. They sure did make a huge mark on music, right
I
or
mean,
wrong,
those
and that's
sounds.
a
It's
that,
the
that
the bass is not complicated. It's not complex on those records, but it's just right, and it sounds so cool.
yeah, and later on, I mean, if you go through that whole discography, or would that be the right thing, the right word, I guess? If you go through that whole cash thing, that whole period, Tennessee 2 to Tennessee 3, you'll hear, obviously that they developed as musicians as they went on. But man, those early days, it's just raw. I mean, it was hard. I'm telling you, it was hard to play. To go in and there's no way. Again, that goes back to filling the shoes. I wasn't there to fill his shoes, but I had to pay honor to him, and it's impossible to get that moment, that feeling. But who am I to say if it's right or wrong? It's exactly what you were saying. It was the perfect part, the perfect part. A
Yep.
bass player that has a lot of knowledge about playing, if they had been playing on those, it wouldn't have been the same. Maybe if Bill Black had been playing those parts, it would have been totally different, as we know. Because
Yeah.
Bill Black, when I hear his playing, he had a lot more knowledge about playing than Marshall, So, but it worked perfect for those guys.
But he had a different groove for me. Like Bill Black was a little more I would say even, I don't know, maybe loose is not right word, but it was not that consistent as Marshall Grant's approach. Marshall Grant was kind of like a metronome and then playing like, the one thing over and over, which I think creates that kind of hypnotic, almost mantra groove behind Johnny Cash's voice, because you really don't want much to happen like behind his voice. You want
Exactly
his voice.
right. Yeah, I mean that perfect. That is perfect. That is the description, you know.
Yep.
And it was hypnotic, and I think that is the goal. Is especially, and again, these are only my opinion, you know, and not meant for anyone else. But as a bass player, I feel like if I can lock someone into that hypnotic groove, you got them, you know, because if you can see people swaying or patting their foot at that moment, you know, I figure, okay, I've done my job, you know, and to have that hypnotic dog looking at the ceiling fan thing, you know, I mean, you know, you get people locked in right there and just build from that, you know. But that's right, Marshall, once he locked into his thing, it was there. It was there. And he had to be. I mean, there was only three of them. So he was a big part of that, you know. I mean, I know Johnny's doing that boom chicka thing, and his guitar is playing a very important part. But Marshall he's bass player drummer, you know.
He sounded so cool, but I'm glad, like that. I like that approach, and I haven't heard that too much on records. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting approach. And when I say quadruple, I usually mean this.
Right. Yeah.
When it's like
Yeah.
a 16 notes.
Yeah. I've never thought of it like that, but that's true. That's
Yeah,
true. That's very
because
true. I'm going to
then you
use that from now on. I'm going to tell people I can quadruple slap.
yeah.
But yeah,
Uh,
but you know what? That's right. I never thought of it. I never thought of it like that. But it's true.
because technically this is a quarter note and then a triplet, but triplet just with slaps,
Right. Right.
right?
Yeah. That's true.
Cool.
You know, and if you can really become friends with the engineer, you know, and then whoever's mastering the record, I've been lucky enough to find some of these people. You know, I don't ask them. Hell, it's not up to me, the end product. But if you get the people to add the right amount of reverb or a slapback echo, whatever you want it to be, you can take those, and if it's added just right, man, if you could take, you know, if you're doing the pluck first, man, with a little bit of slapback on that, it even becomes more, you know, and it's a good thing. And that's the reason that a lot of times I'll do it after the fact, because then it can be manipulated within the track. You know, obviously you can't do it when you're playing live, but in a recording setting, you can. You know, just and then cut, chop, paste, whatever you want to do. Hopefully they won't do it. You know, they'll just let it be a consistent track. You know, and I'll do that on overdubs where I'll give the whole. I'll play the whole track as if I'm recording it again, just for the feel of. You know. And it's something that it's whatever your preference is, you know. So if you feel like doing that, man, go for it. You know, if you've got the stamina to do that for all day, you know, I don't. So I'll just go after, and that way I can go, whoa, stop, wait, let me get my heartbeat back out of my arm, So a lot of times I'll do the mock after the fact, you know. And that's going to boil down to timing too, you know. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Um, if you're playing this, you know, you can't be in there going, you, you know what I'm saying? It's all, you just have to see, you know, just try it. Try it for yourselves, you know, give it a shot. But,
I agree,
yeah.
but I like the approach, and I have to check the. So you recommended rubber plants, raising sand, and walk the line to check out that groove.
Yeah, because Bella Rose, Jay Bella Rose, dear friend, and
All right.
beautiful drummer. Um, we done that a lot, you know, because we could see each other. We're sitting side by side, and you know, we just felt the groove the same, and you know, so there's a lot of times when Jay will play a triplet, you know, on the rim of his bass drum, and that would inspire me, and I'd be but oh, you know, and we had to be careful to do this stuff to complement what is happening in front of us, you know, not to get in the way of the lyric. But I think there's one tune maybe called Fortune Teller that we done that a lot, you know, just switching, you know. I don't remember what key it was in, but you know, and I was thinking of that thing too, like a fortune teller, just doing like almost like I I'd like to think of that stuff as like raindrops, you know, if that makes sense to or a wash tub, you know. I don't know if you ever got in. I love wash tub bass for whatever reason, just cause it's just like a and I've done that on a few records, you know, of just and you know, muting like with the index finger and if you get it here, you know, it's it may have to be a layer within the record, but it can be a cool layer thing, you know. I'm not recommending to do that for 3 minutes of the song. You might make some people mad within the band, but you know. But I guess you could do it as a slap thing too, though. You know,
I
I
love
guess it
that.
would work. Yeah,
I
yeah,
love
because
that.
you mentioned the especially in the psychobilly stuff. You know, it seems like it could be. You know, could just be a cool thing.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I agree. Um, if you want, you can leave your bass. I love hearing you play, you know, but I want to talk to you more.
Yeah, let's talk.
So all those like some kind of certificates behind you, like a Grammy and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, awesome. You're so humble. How many records on I know you told me that you don't know how many records you played
I
on,
don't.
but do you know how many records you played on that were nominated or that won Grammys?
Um, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't have any idea, honestly. Um, one that I
Amazing.
want to be. I know one for sure that I'm proud did win, and I'm proud for the whole team. It's all a team, you know. And but one record that I was proud of that won was the Raisin Sand record. Um, with Robert and Alison, and it won Grammys in all its categories that year, but it also won Record of the Year, and I don't I'm proud for everyone and myself, that to be a part of that, and to get that nod. To I don't know. I'm really happy about that, you know. But as far as
That's
how many,
great
I
to
don't
be
know.
proud of.
Yeah, I'm proud, and I don't know about this year. Um, the only the only one that I was notified that I know was nominated, but I didn't watch the Grammys, and I don't know. I don't know, but and I there was there is a Burt Bacharach and Daniel Tashin, but Burt Bacharach, they done this record called Blue Umbrella, and I know it was up for a Grammy. I don't know if it won or not, but I know they were nominated maybe in the pop category or something. Um, but
You
Burt
might be
Bacharach, man,
the only bass player that like I don't know how many Grammys.
uh, no, but Burt, man, I came up again. I was born in the '60s, and man, coming up, I know we talked about Dad being a bluegrass country fan. My brother Western swing. Our middle brother, we grew up not. We were in the hills of Arkansas, but we were close to the flatlands and not far from Memphis. You know, not far from Memphis, Tennessee, and we could pick up a radio station at night, and it wasn't formatted, so you might hear a Frank Sinatra tune, and then they play Ray Price, and then you would hear Booker T and MGs, and then you would hear Dionne Warwick, and I just remember I would hear those songs, and it would always just be like, oh crap, man, that melody, and it was Burt Bacharach and Hal David writing, lyric and the music. And so I came up with that. I came up hearing Burt Bacharach, and it's another magical moment career wise to have gotten that call, to come and play on a Burt Bacharach thing. It's very humbling, and I feel very fortunate to have got to do that. And I mean, I'm proud of any record I've got to do, but I'm proud of that one. You know, I the EP, I guess it's 6 or 7 songs. So
I bet. I talked to actually Kevin Smith, our mutual friend,
yeah.
yesterday. He told me that you mentioned somewhere that how, or he heard you like talking that that you had to bring your bass to a luthier, and that you wanted like a specific sound that you. I wanted to know like if you gave like a certain directions, like or it was, I don't know. Like, is it something specific that the luthier had to do, like to create the tone that you were looking for?
Well, yeah. Early on, when I first started going out to Los Angeles and playing on T-Bone's records, I didn't have a bass out there then, and I was renting, or they were renting. I went and picked out a bass at Stein on Vine out there, and I remember going back and playing them, and I found the 7/8, and I loved it, but I didn't want to pay that much money for it. So fast forward 3 or 4 years, and I remember when I heard that bass, it was like, oh man, this is the sound I've always heard in my head. When I was a kid, this is the sound that I think of as a bass. And so fast forward a few years, and a really good buddy of mine named Ron Shuffler in North Carolina called up, and he had this bass, And he said, I got this bass, and he sort of told me, he says 7/8 bass, and that's what I was after. And anyway, I wound up over there, and we met in a parking lot of this club, and he brought that thing out, and it was in pretty rough shape. Structurally, it looked pretty good. It was a bass that I was just playing, by the way, and structurally, outside and everything, it looked as it pretty much looks now. But inside, it was a nightmare. And shitty bridge, shitty strings, everything that you could imagine, because Ron is obviously wanting to sell the thing. But man, I played the first note on it, and it was like a B flat note, and I knew it was in there. I mean, you can hear if it's in the bass, it's going to come out. You I can just tell if it's in there, and so I brought it back to town, and the luthier at that time was working at the bass shop on Music Road, Jack Phelps. And Jack was a retired principal bassist in the symphony here in Nashville. And he took this thing apart, and, it had nails in it where they nailed the top back down. It had a solid wood 8x10 picture frame nailed in the back over a crack. And but Jack called, and he said, "How? What do you hear when you hear the bass?" And I said, "Well, for that bass, I want it to sound like, you know, like Ray Brown playing behind Ella Fitzgerald in the mid to late 50s. I want that sound, or Paul Chambers, or Bob Moore, on those great 60s records, or Junior Husky. I hear that." And he still wasn't grasping that. And he was like, "Well, what record should I?" And I said, "Well, Jack, go to the window." And he said, "Okay, I'm standing at the window." And I said, "Look up in the sky." And he looked up and he says, "Okay." And I said, "Find the biggest, puffiest cloud that you see in the sky." And he said, "Okay, I'm looking at it." And I said, "That's what I want my note to sound like." And man, he done it. He got it. But and it is. That's what I hear. That's what I want to hear, is whatever you visualize up there, and you see that big floating cloud up there. I want to hear my notes like that. I want my notes to come out just that thing. Just a big, almost like you could jump on that cloud and just kick back and just ride it all day long. And Jack done it. He really done it. And you know, this is as much his child as it is mine. It's Jack. He got it. You know, and I guess maybe coming from that older school too. And the gut strings, and you know he captured it. And when Jack left, Randy Hunt came in, and Randy he's done. Randy's equally as good. Randy knows Randy is an equal too. you know. So that's my guys there. You know.
I love that. That's a pretty good description of what you want, like your bass to sound like. Since
Yeah.
you have like a really long career and like very diverse career, is there what would you consider to be the highlight of your career?
No, they're all highlights. That's an impossibility to say. You know, it's been great. It's been so great. You know, I'm very thankful, very lucky. I can't. I wish I could say there's a specific thing, but it's all been so great, man. It's just really been great.
that's I mean, beautiful to hear. Do you write any music?
Um, no, not really. I figure that that's a tricky question as far as setting down and writing a specific tune. I no, but in the session world, we're all getting to write. You know, we're all getting to add a piece of ourselves. You know, especially on T-Bone Burnett records. You know, he allows us all to have a voice, and you know, I feel like T-Bone gave me a musical voice where he was the first guy that said, "Look," I remember asking him, "What do you want, T-Bone?" And he looked at me and he said, "You're the bass player." You know, that was his instruction. Now he'll tell you if he wants specific parts, but he allowed me to have a musical voice, and I feel like I get to write in that situation. You know, uh, during the pandemic, there's been two or three different buddies, and we write songs like lyrics and bluegrass country tunes, and some's been cut and a lot hasn't. But that's been fun. That's been fun, and I'll come up with melodies a lot of times on that. You know, but no, as far as sitting and writing a whole piece, I don't think.
Uh, do you know what's is there anything new that you're working on? Are there any new projects coming up we should be looking for?
Um, Man, I wouldn't know without looking. I'd have to go grab the calendar and look, but nah, I don't. Um, I guess there's a current. I'm trying to think. Dolly Parton. Dolly had a record out at Christmas, and I played on that. I think I played on the swinging things. It was Dolly and Michael Bublé done a duet, and but it's past Christmas, so you probably don't want to go back and listen to that record. You know. But yeah, that I don't know. I don't know. I wouldn't know without looking. You know, I think Paula Cole. There's a Paula Cole record that we've all worked remotely on during the pandemic, and I think that record. I seen a thing via Rolling Stone yesterday where I think that record might be about ready to drop, and there's a Lana Del Rey record that might be coming out this month or next month. I'm not sure, but those would be two records I know that's coming out. You know, and Atlanta, I think I only played maybe on two or three songs. Again, all remote. You know, and to be honest with you, I just can't think right now what else may be coming out or out there. And I can only take one day at a time. You know, so I don't really know again without looking at the calendar what's coming up.
It's good to have a calendar during the pandemic and for yours. Especially.
Well,
Um,
it's good not to see a white calendar. You know, as long as there's
yes,
some ink in the thing, you know.
something
But
in it. Yes, I agree with that. Um, since I mentioned like you had like a long career and lots of things changed during this time. I would like to hear from your perspective. What do you notice that changed in the music industry and in general for you as a musician since the beginning of your career until now?
oh,
Lots of
well,
things.
yeah, there has been a lot that's changed. Um, Man, that's a really tough question. It seems like right now things are getting back to where I, the stuff I've been involved in has been deep and heavy, and lyrically and musically, and I hope and I feel like people during this pandemic has came to the realization that stuff, good and bad stuff, happened, and I think people are going to be and are craving. We talked about it earlier. They're craving music, arts and music, but they're craving something deep that's going to hit them, because people's hearts have been affected by this. They've either lost loved ones or they know people that's passed away, and given whatever scenario that would be, not just a pandemic, but it seemed like before there for a few years, everyone, it was just, oh, let's create a beat and sing about, you know, uh, a tailgate or getting drunk. Hey, let's pass a solo. And it seemed like it was stuck there for a while. That was something that was, I couldn't never wrap my head around, because it's like, I would go into sessions and not ask for lyrics. And I always want to ask for the lyric, what does this song say, and play that lyric. And so currently it seems like things are going hopefully to that. And that's what I've been involved in, where it's like, I don't need any music. I'll listen to the song once or twice and then play that lyric. You know, what's it, what are you saying here, and how can you make that important? And that's a change that personally I've seen for the stuff that I can't say that's across the board but for the stuff that I've been involved in, that's been happening. And it's very refreshing, to see really great lyrics coming down the pike and you know, but in the past, I've been fortunate to be with great lyrics anyway, you know, but
Lyrics are important, and I usually don't ask for lyrics when somebody hires me, but I might start to do that, because I heard like quite a few bass players that I respect, like actually asking for lyrics. So
if
might
it's
be
a
something
good,
in it.
yeah, yeah, if
It
it's,
gets you in a vibe.
it does. It really does, I don't always ask for lyrics, but if it's heavy, I want a lyric there, I want to know. And then the phrasing too, you know. You can get into if you, for me, if I'm looking at a lyric, I start trying to, you know, get into the breath of the singer, and and how are they coming to that lyric and where they, and that will determine the length. For me, that determines the length of my note, and do I play that note up front or do I lay the note back or do I put the note in the middle? And you know, um, you know, I don't like mentioning records, but a record that I know I done that a lot on was a record from a couple years back, and a great female piano singer named Sarah Bareilles, and the name of that record is "Amidst the Chaos,"
Mhm.
and which is very fitting, very fitting title, and I don't remember. I mean, it was heavy musically. It was heavy. There was like 3 to 5 page charts, and we didn't. It wasn't like we were spending a ton of amount of time on each song. But obviously, I would. We'd run the song through a couple times, and I would watch the chart and learn the chart, and but I didn't want to get nailed down to having to look at 5 pages of music and then never feel anything. And those songs were really great lyrics. And I wound up playing that record off of the lyric, you know, versus the music. And I don't know. For me personally, I feel like that's a good record to go in and reference as far as is like, man, they're playing. I played the lyric. I tried to play the lyric as much as I could, and for that, to me, that's a good example, you know. And I
That's a
think
beautiful
most,
approach.
yeah, the drummers, uh, J. Bella Rose played on half of that, and um, Jim Keltner played on half of it, and Blake Mills played guitar on half, and Mark Rebo played guitar,
Oh
and then
wow, I
of
love
course,
Mark Rebo.
yeah, Rebo. And Rebo's that guy too. I mean, he's looking at the music, but when we started playing, everybody was keyed into what she was saying in the lyric. I did.
Mhm.
I feel like that record it's a good example of all the musicians really being on the same page, you know, and going, man, we got the layer. Everybody got the layer, but as far as playing that thing, you know, that amidst the chaos, it's only a couple of years old, I guess, but it's a fun record. It's a really fun record to be a part of, you
Hmm.
know. So maybe people out there in this land go check it out, and,
Yes.
you know.
Could you please repeat the name of the album?
The artist is Sarah Bareilles, and amidst the chaos.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. People, please check
Yes.
it out.
Yeah.
Besides that,
If
you
you,
have Mark Rebo. So,
oh man, how can you go wrong with Mark Rebo? Talk about
oh yeah,
experimental. You know.
unbelievable. You know, I love his playing. You know, like I got introduced to his playing through Tom Waits, and then discovered other stuff that he did. I'm constantly impressed with that guy.
There's an example. You mentioned Tom Waits, talking about people playing the lyric. Go and check out those records for the. If you guys out there hasn't checked out Tom Waits, man, check those out because they're to me that's a prime example of the musicians playing the lyric, you know, and getting into character, you know, and the bass player, I think is his last name Cohen. Forget the first name.
It depends. Like there's like a few guys that he used. There's a Greg Cohen.
Greg Cohen
He played on lots of Tom Waits records. Larry Taylor
and
played on lots of,
Larry Taylor.
like a
Yeah,
more of a blues guy from Los Angeles. He played with Hollywood
right.
Cats and other guys.
Ah, Larry
Kent Heath,
Taylor.
he
Yeah,
passed a
that's
couple of years ago.
that's right. Yeah,
Who
Larry.
else? Tony Garnier. Tony Garnier played. I interviewed him as well. He played with Tom. He played on the soundtrack for Down by Law,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the other bass players too. But you know, I think these
I
were
feel like
the main
Larry.
ones.
Yeah, Larry seems like Larry and Greg
Greg.
though for the bulk of the stuff that I've listened to has been one of those two guys,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you
I
know
love
where
their
they just crawled in and I know Rebo like he really he and Greg Cohen have a history and uh,
yes.
and I guess me and Rebo have a history now. You know we've been recording together since maybe 2003 or four
Oh wow.
on
Okay,
a lot
almost
of
20 years.
yeah. Well, we all done a record. God dang, what was that thing? Majestic Silver Strings. We all done this record. Oh man, when was it? Maybe 2010, 11. I don't know, 10, 11 years back, 12. And it's Mark Rebo, Bill Frisell, and Buddy Miller all playing guitars, and then Greg Lease playing steel, and Jay Bella Rose and myself. And then there's various singers. But we all got together and done this record called Majestic Silver Strings. And we only played 2 times and retired. That's it. I don't know if that band ever happened again or not. But it was great hearing Mark. It was great hearing all of those people together, you know. And I love
That's
Mark
the beauty of
Ribak.
music.
I love Mark Ribak. And I love Bill Frisell, Buddy. I love all of them, you know. But
You know what I love? I love like what kind of passion and how much love you talk about all of your sessions, and it's just amazing. I mean, being whole life you dedicate a whole life to music, and we're still excited about it. We still love it with our whole heart. I
man,
don't think that
yeah,
anyone can understand that besides musicians,
no.
really.
And you know, I've I've told my wife repeatedly well, there's 2 things that I always said I wouldn't do, and if I started doing, I'm gonna quit. One thing is I never want to kiss anyone's ass, you know, to get a gig or any job. You know, I just don't. If I can't, if you can't hire me because of my playing and attitude, then that's fine. Get someone else. And the main thing that I've always told my wife was, if I ever am not excited about getting to play music and be a musician, especially a working upright bass player, if I can't be excited about that, then I don't need to play anymore. You know, and I do every day. I wake up and I'm like, man, I pinch myself and it's like, has this just happened? And I love that. I'm with you 100%. You know, I I love waking up every day knowing that I'm a musician. You know.
That's I love that saying.
Yeah.
Everybody should hear that, like, especially people that are trying to convince us that being a musician is not a real job, that we're just having fun.
You'll love this.
We all heard that before, right?
Well, and Sean Camp, when I first came to town, Sean told me, I came here, I was really nervous. It was like, man, I don't know if I can make it. Got young children, no money. And I said, well, the good thing about it, Sean, I feel like, I'm among my own now. I'm not just scum of the earth. Where I came from is what you don't have a real job. You're scum of the earth. And I said, man, now I don't feel like I'm scum of the earth. And Sean looked at me and laughed and he said, oh no, you're still scum of the earth. You're just among a lot more scum now. I love that because it's like, yeah, there's a lot more of us, and we can all relate to each other now. But yeah, yeah, I tell you, it's if it's passion and you're going to be a musician, depending on where you want to go and what level you want to get into, if you get committed to it, it's a lifelong thing. And I'd love for these people that says, oh yeah, well, it's not a real job. I'd like for them to come out and have 1 week of what we do. When before this pandemic, I would come in off of the road and be having these 12 to 15-hour days in the studios, of just whatever it would be. I remember being over, it was called House of Blues Studios at that time, and multiple studios within this complex. And I was doing a country session in one studio, and I came out and done an afternoon session across the street. And it was the first season of this show called Nashville, this TV show, and just the first season. and I worked on it, and I was still playing in the time jumpers then. So I had to split from the studio at I guess I split from the studio around 7:30 or 8 because we started at 9 p.m. And I wouldn't play the time jumper gig until 11, and then came back to House of Blues and went back to work until like 1 or 2 in the morning, and got up and repeated the same session routine the next day. And I'd do this for 4 or 5 days and then catch a plane and head out. And I was just beginning to tour, or I guess I was a couple years into Diana, but it was just becoming like the tour season. And I loved it, I love to work. And but these people saying it isn't a real job, they need to come and ride in that van. Ride in that van for 8 or 10 hours and sleep in that van and get up and go into that venue and present a show for people that's paid money, to come and see you so you can make money and crawl back in the van. Come and do that for a week and then come to me or come to yourself or whatever. And let's talk about that. Let's talk about that real job thing, you know. I think there'd be a different mentality. So, but it is a
Absolutely.
commitment.
I mean,
It's a commitment that and then all the hours that we just put into it, getting to that, you know,
oh
the
yeah.
money that we've had to spend to find out what strings work for our hands, or you know, well, that's a very important thing. It's the hands, you know, it's the individual person's hands. I hear people all the time that used to come up and say, "Man, I'm getting me some gut strings so I can do that Bob Moore shit." And it's like, well, first of all, it's not Bob Moore shit. Second of all, it was Bob's hands. He's what made that bass sing. Now, those strings, bridge, setup, that all helps. I'm not in denial of that. A good instrument helps. But you got to have the hands to bring the thing out to begin with. And, you know, with that being said, the money that we spend to figure that out, it's not necessarily the string, but these things aren't cheap. Strings are not cheap to be experimenting with, and bridges and setups and what have you. So there's a lot of effort and time to go in to hone this craft to begin with. That's something that people doesn't realize either.
It is. It's people. I mean, musicians realize this, and then, but
Oh yeah, yeah.
it's
The
more like just
general,
playing. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But
Um, do you like we talked about some people that influenced you over the years, but what would you say? Who are the biggest influences on you and your bass playing?
um, well, definitely Bob Moore. You know, Bob he's a big influence. Junior Husky, I love Junior's playing, and Roy. Roy has been an influence, but the whole, I should break it down with genres. For the country music, it's Bob Moore for me, and Junior and Roy, and another wonderful player that's not mentioned much is Henry Strelecki for this town, and then I love Ray Brown. I love Ray Brown, and I love Paul Chambers. For that world, for the jazz thing, I should say. For that, I meant jazz stuff, and I love Willie Dixon, and and then there's electric bass players. Duck Dunn, I love, and Paul McCartney, I love, and James Jamerson, of course, I love, and David Hungate, a wonderful player, still lives here, and luckily I feel fortunate to have gotten to be really good friends with David over the years. But beautiful electric player, and but his first instrument was trombone, and he loves Charlie Christian's guitar. So we had the love of swing, and David was one of the founding members of the rock band Toto, and but just beautiful crafted. I love his bass lines and Willie Wheats, and so those are my influences. You know, if I had to pick, my two main guys would be Bob Moore and Ray Brown. Two different genres, but I just that would be my go-to. You know,
It's funny like that, but like quite a few bass players like mentioned that, that approach, kind of the best down would be Ray Brown slash Bob Moore. And I'm glad to hear that more and more.
well,
And yeah,
Bob and Bob took me under his wing. You know, not long after I moved here, and I'm forever grateful for that. And I've gotten to tell Bob that several times that I've really thanked him, but watching how he changed after that. It really changed. My work changed. I started getting more calls because I applied what he taught me into my playing, and one of the first things he did tell me, he said, learn how to play every bass you ever touch. And I didn't understand that until I started traveling a lot, where I was encountering different instruments. And what he meant was, it's got to be your hands. It's in your hands. And no matter what bass you're playing, it should sound like you as an individual. And that was an important lesson that I still carry. It doesn't matter how it's set up or whatever. Me as an individual, I got to find where that bass speaks and where it doesn't speak, and it's still I got to. It's my hands. I've got to. I'm the guy that's got to make that thing work. And that was an important thing that I've carried with me. And then just how he would pull the string. You know, it
did you ever
changed.
talk to
Changed.
him about slap?
Yeah, he didn't. I know he slapped on a couple, maybe two or three things. The Elvis version of U.S. Mail.
Yes, that's actually the only bass solo, the only slap bass solo that Elvis ever had. It's on US Mail, and then Bob Moore slapped on it.
And this is, oh man, that is so bizarre too, because a person would think it would have been Bill Black or something in the early days, but I know Bob played on a lot of the Elvis stuff, that late '60s and the soundtracks and what have you. But no, I don't. He had that thing. He would play it. He would do it slow, and I don't know where he got it. Someone in town, but the thing where he hit the bass, I forget, and then they come back up and hit it. It was a trick. I can't do it, and Bob could do it real slow, but it's a it's like a, and it comes back and hits the fingerboard and then pops back up, and you know it just seemed like it would be a great showpiece. But no, as far as him slapping, I don't think he really thought of himself as a slapper.
He
You
was
know,
excellent slapper. Have you ever heard Tuper Sauce's record, Seraj tu Shostakovich?
no, no, man. But I need to. It sounds like I need to. That's going to be something I do today.
So I'll send you the link. It's you can
Ah,
it's very
please.
obscure song, but I've been talking about it for years, and then people should check it out. So
And
check out
Bob
this.
slapping.
The song is called Scherzo for Slapped Bass. So,
Yes.
and it's are you familiar with Topper Saucy?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, more in the sense of the tax stuff,
Yeah. Okay.
but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm familiar. I know he uh, um, I love characters.
Oh
I
yeah.
love characters,
They
so
are the color of this world.
oh, absolutely. And he was a part of that, whatever that rainbow, whatever color of the rainbow, he's in there someplace. And so yeah, I'm familiar on that end of it. But
So check out
yeah, I'm really
Scarecrow for
anxious.
slapped bass. Bob Moore slapping through the whole thing almost. I mean the
Uh,
melody is slapped. So
he,
it's
Bob is. I know he could, but he would just get Joe Zinkin to do it.
I found out about Joe Zinkin through Bob Moore. He had an interview in the late 90s or somewhere around there for a Johnny Cash magazine. And then he was
Yeah,
talking about Joe Zinkin. And at that time, for some reason, nobody was mentioning Joe Zinkin's name anywhere. So you couldn't find it. Like, you talk about Slap and then nobody would mention Joe. And through that interview, I discovered Joe Zinkin, and then I tried to find every single recording of Joe Zinkin, and that's
yeah.
how I discovered how, how amazing he was, and
Oh, brilliant,
one of the
brilliant.
like best slap bass players in the history. I mean,
I
it's
agree, Bob.
unbelievable.
Bob. I remember Bob telling me that everyone in town wanted Joe Zinkin's right hand.
Mm,
Joe had the best right hand, and Bob told me that several times.
interesting.
Not so much as left hand. I mean, I love Joe Zinkin's playing, but Bob was more fluent left hand wise. More knowledge, junior, and but Joe, man, his notes, and sometimes there's certain record. I love the length of his notes. To
Uh-huh.
me, his notes were real staccato and just real. It's like, my God, here's the note. You know, but his slap was so clean and
He was so good.
ah,
I mean, I'm
yeah,
constantly impressed.
yes, yeah, same here. But Bob always, he credits Joe Zinkin and I was, I it's not something that I hate it, that the guy passed away, but I was a pallbearer at Joe's. I was one of Joe's pallbearers when he died,
Mm.
so I it was. I hated it. I hated it when it happened, but yeah, I just remember it being really cold, and I met Joe, I guess a time or two. And I remember he came to the Grand Ole Opry sometime or another, maybe early or 96, 7, 98, something like that, and Bob was there, Lightning Chance,
Oh, is that
and
the famous bass hang that happened?
yeah, I guess so. Billy Linneman, who was in the staff band, and Kent Blanton. I think Mike Bubb was playing there with Del McCurry, so he was there. And but Joe, if I remember correctly, I don't think Joe had ever even been in the new Grand Ole Opry. Like, and it was built in 1974. So I mean, he knew the Grand Ole Opry when it was downtown. Like at the Ryman, the Grand Ole Opry at the Grand Ole
Uh-huh.
Opry. But I don't. I think if I remember correctly, he had never been in what he was still referring to it as the new Opry House, and it'd been there since 1974, I think. And then I remember being right in front of him coming in, you know, through the backstage area, the hallways there at the Opry House, and Ernest Tubb, I forget what year he died, but Ernest Tubb had died, I believe, sometime in mid-'80s. And Joe Zinkin's wife asked if Ernest Tubb was going to be on the show that night. And I just sort of froze because it was like, whoa, I mean, uh, Ernest Tubb's been dead for like 10 or 12 years at this point, maybe longer or maybe less. But that's sort of, it was like when Joe quit, when he quit. Maybe Bob got him out for one record sometime in the 80s or something. There was like a
is that
one-off
Boom
Johnny
Chicka
Cash.
Boom with Johnny Cash?
Yeah, I think that was the record that he came back out on or something. But
Okay.
I don't know, man. My understanding, or from how they were talking and how it appeared, like when he left, And then Kent Blanton got his bass. I remember when Kent.
Yeah, I heard about it. Yeah, you told me
When
that.
Kent got that bass, I remember all that happening, and but Joe, man, he seemed like such a beautiful guy, and the one thing I do remember that was funny as shit about this stuff was to tell you how these guys, they were still and talk about charisma. Bob Moore and Joe Zinkin's got some charisma too. And Zinkin, there's some great old footage of him playing. And he'd always play. I forget if it was the right side or the left side, but the camera would always be over here. It's like he never faced the camera. A lot of the old footage that I see, of him in the band, he's always facing away, and Bob lacks no confidence, period, in anything, But these guys, Ray Price, both of them had played on Ray Price records, and Joe played on a lot of Ray Price stuff, and Bob too. But they're sitting side by side up in these pews, and Ray Price is on the stage. And it was Kent, I guess Kent and myself were standing over sort of watching these guys and watching Ray Price too. And it's a special night because, here's all these bass players, iconic old bass players together. And but Joe, he couldn't hear out of like the right side. And Bob had, he couldn't hear that great out of the left side. And they're staring at each other, just screaming, so they can hear one another. And all the while, Ray Price is talking about them upstage, and going, these two gentlemen behind me, they played on, For the Good Times and whatever song, and he's mentioning all these, their accolades, And Bob or Joe, neither one knows that he's talking about them. They're just back there screaming at each other. But the spotlight, when he says, and back here they are, Joe Zinkin and Bob Moore, and the spotlight sort of comes up, and as soon as the spotlight hits them, both of them on cue raises up and waves to the audience. But they have no clue about all the shit or why they're in the spotlight. They just know they're in the spotlight. And that was the funniest thing to me, I'm to witness that. It was like, oh crap, man, these guys are stars. They are stars, Doesn't matter that Ray could have said they sounded like shit on my records. They just know when the spotlight hit them, they were on. It was like that camera. There's the red light, you're on, And
That's such a cool story.
It is. And
So
Kent,
amazing.
I'm
Wow.
pretty certain it was Kent and myself were the two guys that was sitting there, and we hit the ground, but it was like, can you believe that just happened? And the whole time we're looking at each other going, they have no idea that he's talking about them, because they're back just trying to scream in each other's good ear.
It's so cool. Oh my god, it's amazing. I want to talk about oh man, we were talking for almost 3 hours. I guess this is to be like the 5 volumes.
Good, man.
Talk. I have a question about your gear. Like, what how many basses you have? What are those basses? Pickups, strings, amps.
Ah, yeah. Well, I've got four upright basses here at the house that are in pretty heavy rotation. Rotation meaning uh, uh, they're all different animals, and and then I've got a bass up in Los Angeles. But they're all set up the same. This bass that I had earlier is this is a Tyrolean 7/8, old 7/8 bass, early 1800s. I think it's hard to pinpoint a specific year, but just by looking at the green and this, just how everything about it. Jack and myself, we all sort of figured that it was early 1800s, so 1830, somewhere along in there. And but gut strings, all the way across. Pirastro makes these strings for me, so the G and the D are cut down quarters, but they're not the fat quarters like um the guy that plays with Marcellus, Enrique. I forget his name, but anyway, if you get in touch with Pure Astro and ask for my model, the G and D are cut down to the original old labellas from the '60s or the R tones. So it's basically medium gauge gut string, and then the A and the E are Pure Astro pizzicatas. So it's just fine silver, really not flat wound, but like half wound silver on gut. And it's all an opinion. I wanted that just for what sustain I can get, you know, out of these. When I was on tour, we went through Frankfurt, Germany, and I met with Adrian Mueller, their Pure Astro, and I had an old set of labellas, and we were talking about this, and I said, if you can make these strings, I'll gladly put my name, attach my name to it, and he done it, or Pierre Astro done it, but you'd have to ask for these. You can't just call and say, hey, send me a set of quarters, because that's what you're going to get. This is a specific set, and they cut these down to that, to that, you know, these are cut to my hand, and I wanted them all to be the same pull. That's an important thing for me is I want the G to pull the same as the E, so, and, but each instrument here, they're all different, as I say, different animals. This being 7/8, I've got a German flatback over here, mid 1800s, a little more mid rangey. This bass that's here in the case is a round back, late 1800s German bass. And then I've got just a plywood American Standard over here, all strung in gut. And the pickup I use is a Lifeline, David Gage. I guess it's David Gage Lifeline. And don't know if you can see a little fork that just sort of fits over the adjuster. And I started using that when I was with Diana. I'd had the realest pickup, and I love those pickups, but in some settings, it was a little bit
we couldn't find what we were after, and this Lifeline is a little more isolated, I should say, or my opinion again. And I remember hearing it for the first time, and for me, it still sounded like the instrument. And I switched all my basses to the Lifeline. And I think
do you have a favorite amp?
I use Ampeg.
Ampeg?
Been really, really, really good to me, for years. And no specific.
I know that they have you on their website.
I've got a room full of them back there.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Even either 410s or 15s or 12.
Oh, you use 15s as well?
I did with Elton. I had 15-inch, definitely a 15-inch speaker.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
I always have issues like with 15s. I usually use 8s, 10s.
Well, I'm with you. I love 10s. 2 410s. I love a good 410 cab, man. I love them. And but I know when I went out with him, and it seems like maybe there's been a couple of tours where I just need it. I know with Elton, it was the loudest that I ever played, and I had a 410 cab and a 15 cab right at my. I mean, it was sitting right behind me, right at my ass, and every time I play a note, it was so loud that it'd be blowing my pant leg. And I didn't necessarily, I was thinking, if I'm going to get like that, I should have like 2 cabs of 10-inch speakers. And but for whatever reason, they'd asked for a 15, and that's, it worked good in that situation. I don't like playing that loud though, really.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah. I tried like 115 and 410s. That's for some reason I thought that would be great, but then after a couple of weeks I switched it for 2 410 cabs, which is what I play now.
I'm with you. There's just something, those 8s or 10s, just the way they respond. I just like the response of it.
Another thing that I'm very interested to hear, what is your favorite way to record bass? Do you have like favorite mics, favorite placement?
Yes, sir. Well, in a perfect world, I love the old Neumann U47s. And, I always ask for that, but not every place has a $10,000 to $15,000 mic sitting around. But I have, let me set this bass down. I never walk into any studio and say, you got to use my microphones. But I always have my microphones with me. And one of them that I'll carry, and I love stacking. My favorite thing to do is take a nice tube mic, is the reason that I mentioned the 47. But just a really good tube mic and a ribbon mic, and I love stacking them. And in my mind, you get the best of both worlds. You're getting, a lot of people with these ribbons, you got to really crank the gain up for them. And but I love the blend of I feel like I'm getting both worlds. I'm getting that big round ribbon thing, and I'm, with that tube, you can get some of the articulation. And but at any rate, I have this old Altic Lansing 639. They call it the bird cage, and I use that mic actually on all of I've Walked the Line. For that soundtrack, this microphone, and depending on the room, I'll break that mic out, and then I have, you know, if I've got room and it needs a big room, I've got this old RCA 44. You know, no bells or whistles. There's no settings. Plug it in and go. And so I always, if I show up at a session in this city, these microphones, they're going to be really close by. And again, I'm not going to walk into someone's house and say, you got to use my stuff. I always walk in the studio and look the situation over. And, you know, if they're coming at me with a couple microphones that you would expect to see at the end of a saxophone, then I'm going to go get this case and come in and go, hey, I've got these two mics. But, you know, most of the studios in this city, they're going to have a pretty good mic collection. And most engineers that I encounter, I always go in and if I don't know the engineer, I always just approach it with kid gloves. And, you know, again, I'm not forceful and say, you got to use my stuff until they start trying to say, well, we're going to mic your bass up here with this little, and it's like, no, I've got these microphones, and if you've got a good tube, let's stack them up. And, you know, I've luckily been around long enough to know what works and what doesn't. And as far as miking and where to mic, you know, for these guys, and this is with either one of them, but if I'm stacking them, you know, I don't know if you can, you know, I'm not going to put them straight down here at the actual F hole. I always go in at an angle, you know, and put it about right there, that being the top mic. And if I was stacking, you know, that's going to be the stack. You know, the top might be here because I don't want to. The last thing I want to get is that. You know, I want the note to be full. And the key thing, that's where I start. You know, looking at the front of the bass, I'm going to start at this angle. You know, but no, I won't go any higher than the bottom of this fingerboard. I don't want to, personally, I don't want a neck mic. People says, well, I want to get your fingers. And it was like, well, if you can't hear that off of that microphone, you know, in today's technology, it's going to come through. You're going to hear it. And if it's a slow song, you know, I might come and make it where both mics are right in front of the bridge. You know, again, one being at about this height, but right in front. And I never get any closer than it. I won't get any closer to the mics than a foot, maybe a foot and a half. And, you know, it just, again, it depends on the song. You know, I always listen to the song. That's a good starting place. And the room, you know, if the room's real bassy, I'll back off of the mic and use all of it more to the strings, more to the center of the bass. You know, if the room, like, you know, where I'm at in the house, I would start, you know, right here with them. And again, it can, you know, I might, depending on the song, I might go straight on or over to the, I go from the bridge to here. If that helps at all. That's probably not, but that's where I record the bass, is from the front of the bridge to right here, depending on the song, depending on the room. You know.
That's very insight. And then I like that you said like, oh, I always bring my mics, but I asked to check out the other ones, which it's interesting because I do the same thing. I always bring my Mojave mics, and
Oh,
then
yeah.
I'm like I even use Mojave like for this little thing. I mean, it's their more simple version,
Yeah, but
but it's
they're
they've been
great
so nice to me.
microphones. And
It's what?
you know what works for you, Great
Yeah,
microphone.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And I tried that on one record. I was like, I love it. And then I always bring those. And then sometimes I use like a studio mics, of course, but I always have something that I know that it's going to sound good,
That's
which
it.
is
That's the thing, man. As long as you know you have some tools that's going to work. That sort of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. You need some tools.
absolutely. Mics are the tools.
You need some microphones and a little bit of knowledge about if your bridge falls, how to set it, get the bridge prop back up. If you break a string, can I finish this song? Can I finish this set on 3 strings? You just need some tools.
I agree
you
with
need
that
a set of strings with you. You need, if you can afford a microphone, just to have with you, when you go to get to that session, because your sound's going to be important. I mean,
yeah, you never know what that session going to lead like into some other session, so it might be the life-changing experience.
That is very true. That is very true.
Oh man, I'm really glad that we share lots of like your same perspective, even on music and different music genres and everything. And we've been talking for over 3 hours. I'm really glad you found time, like in your busy schedule, to talk to me and to join me here in Slapsville. I have one more question for you, but before I ask you like that, like, is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you would like to mention?
No, I think maybe we've covered.
We covered everything, huh?
I'm sure after the fact there's going to be, I wish I would have done or said, but this thing has been like a recording session for I hope both of us, to where this is what we've said and this is how we feel right now.
Yes.
This is where we're at this moment. We can't go back. We can only move forward. And that's with the music, If we done the same thing tomorrow, I'm sure we would feel different. But right now, and I was lucky enough when I moved here that a lot of the older regime was still playing sessions. And that's where I learned. That's where I cut my teeth. These records I'd listened to as a kid, I'm looking at these guys and going, these are the guys that played on the records. And one of the older ones, fiddle player, that was one thing. And I remember Bob Moore's name coming up. It's like, man, how did Bob Moore do that thing? And he'd done these pull-offs on this song. I don't know, bowl of butter beans or something about beans. One of these old swing records. And I played that for this fiddle player. And I said, man, check that out. How did he do that? What do you think he... And he said, no, he done that because that's how he felt at that moment.
Yeah.
And that's what he played at that moment. And I remember just looking at him going, what? And then as I got to being around these old guys and hearing them talk, that's how they played. And it really soaked in. Not that I consciously do that now, but I understand what they're saying because it's true. It's play
this
the moment.
Is a document of time. That's one of the reasons why I'm doing the Slapstream, because I want to give props to all of you, all of us, like now. And that's what's important. Like once we die, we're done. And then
like, I want
to hear all these stories and document all these stories with people, working musicians now, and then that generations to come are able to go back and check it out. Like, oh, I want to hear, how this person or that person like thought about it when he was active, when he was hot, not, when we forget things.
Yeah, right. And it's all it's all a moving picture.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's how I approach, again, music itself is a song.
Yeah, or a movie.
It's a picture, it's all framed. It's up to us. We're the guys and the ladies that's holding the brush. It's up to us to paint it.
Yeah.
We're the ones that paint. And I say us, not specifically just the bass, but we're part of the crew.
Absolutely.
And
We're the engine.
it's all a movie. And the soundtrack, if you go and watch a movie, they're not as good without knowing that Jaws wouldn't have been as good had that bass not been going because something bad's about to happen. The shark is about to eat someone. But it was that thing that tugged our whatever it is.
I agree. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
But music.
This kind of leads me to my last question, which is, what after all these years, what inspired you to still do what you do? What gets you exciting? And I want to give little inspiration, to our viewers.
That's another tough question, because I'm
you kind of
already
answered it. I mean, life and everything, but
man,
that's the question that I usually ask at the end.
I'm just inspired by getting to play. Getting to be a working musician, and especially in the upright bass world, that's inspiring to me. Just getting work and waking up and knowing this is what I get to do. And I'm thrilled about it, man. I am thrilled. And again, it doesn't, over the long term, it would matter. But I've had a good career and I know that there's stuff coming in, but I'm thrilled. I'm as thrilled with a $20 gig as I am about a $2,000 gig. If I'm getting to play music and I'm getting to make a little money and pay bills, that's inspiration, and that man, that if that's not inspiring, that you just get to play, make money, then I don't know what else to tell you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more. Dennis, thanks so much. It was such a pleasure talking to you for, 3 hours and 10 minutes now.
Man,
and it's
we're due up
yeah
for a big drink when we see each other in person then.
Absolutely. We have to count for at least another 3 hours of talk like this.
Oh man, because I tell everybody, I can't give lessons because I wouldn't know what to tell you. But if you bring a bass over here to the house, we'll sit down and we'll play and we'll do that. And that'll be a lesson because you have something that I can learn and I might have a little tiny thing that you can learn.
Oh, yeah, lots of things that I can learn. Thanks so much. I can't wait for that to happen. I can't wait to see you play live. Wish you all the best. And thanks again for joining us here in the Slapsville.
Oh, happy to do it. My pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, that was the end of the 42nd episode of the Slapstream live from Slapsville. Thanks so much for joining us, and thanks to Dennis Crouch. I am overblown with all these stories, and I have to rewatch this again. If you're not subscribed, make sure to slap that subscribe button, slap that like, leave me a comment under the video, and let me know who would you like me to feature next. And don't forget, never fret, slide it in smooth and keep it in a groove. I'm Djordje. This is Slapstream in Slapsville, and I'll see you next Saturday.